My name is Gina Cavallo, a survivor of and childhood abuse. My environment was physical. It became where there was a lot of childhood abuse. There was a lot of using hands. It wasn't a smack on the hand. It was literally beatings. As I learned about what is abuse, the different wheels of abuse, I fit every category. That's how I believed people lived. There were things that I saw in my household that were filled with domestic violence, with other people in the home, with other family members. The fighting, the physical, the hitting, the throwing, the chasing, people landing on the floor, seeing my mother get smacked and hit in between, where she would physically try to get in between people to try to stop the fight, regardless of who the characters were that were involved in the fighting. Most of the time I saw that she got hurt in the interim, not on purpose, but accidentally. As a child, that was traumatizing for me to see. One of the older members of the family, a male person, just snapped his fingers and said, "Okay, it's time to make me breakfast and clean the house." I didn't get up fast enough, and I knew he was coming after me. And I ran into that bathroom and closed the door, and I locked it, and I sat down next to the toilet seat on the floor and just put my hand over my head. That was basically my safe place, not knowing that he was going to push the door open. And he basically took his arm and pushed the door open, and the glass shattered. Next thing you know, my mother was called, and I was in the hospital getting stitches. And I share this because there were two things that stayed with me. One was, in the hospital, they never asked me what happened. Even though I was a child, I probably was 8, 9 years old, and I heard my mother telling the doctor, the nurse at the time, she closed the door too hard and the glass broke. So she knew what happened, but she was protecting the person who hurt me. And the person who hurt me never was accountable for their actions. They never apologized. And I remember reaching out to my mother at the hospital, and I whispered to her, and I said, "Why did he hurt me?" And she said to me, "He didn't hurt you." She said, "He would never hurt you. He loves you." There was another incident with another member of my family. One day I was playing in my room, and this individual came from behind me. And the first thing that he did, and he put his hand over my mouth and tossed me on my bed, and he began assaulting me. I just could remember not being able to breathe, and as his hand was covered over my mouth, when he was finished, he said to me, "Mommy's not going to believe you. Nobody's going to believe you." Ironically, my mother was home. She was actually downstairs cooking dinner. And I ran downstairs to tell my mother what happened. So this member of the family came from behind me and said, "Gina's looking for attention again. She's lying." And my mother just shook her head and had this grin smile on her face, not laughing, but like, "Oh, there you go again," disavowing it. And it was so painful, not being heard, not being believed, and just it was dismissed. That is basically my environment growing up. And the crazy part was that in between, I had countless beatings from members of my family. I will say my father also beat me a lot. I always wanted to leave. In fact, I was considered the black sheep because it would be like, you always have to be different and, you're the troublemaker. And, it was always actually my fault. I was making bad choices in relationships because of my vulnerability. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be cared for. I trusted people. I was very sheltered. So I remember one day I decided it was something that was being planned, that I was going to go to Florida and I was going to make a life for myself. But I had the intention of coming back home. But when I came back home, I was going to come back home and I wanted my family to be proud of me. I was on a mission, and my mission was to have my family be proud. And how I was going to do this was just by being successful in the work that I was going to do. And I basically wanted them to accept me. It was very important that they accepted me. And I didn't have closure until they did accept me. and I wanted them to love me. I wanted them to respect me. So I decided to leave with the intention of coming back and being successful. I met this guy. He was supposed to move to Florida with me, and he was coming after me, and he never came. And he told me that he thought that I was so stupid for believing him, thinking that he was going to come, although he never did show up. And so moving forward, I did get a job at Fort Lauderdale Airport, rent a car, and I also got a job at a restaurant part-time, and I was doing really well. I met this guy who became my friend at this restaurant, and basically we became very good friends. This guy is one of the reasons that led me into the life where he actually wasn't my friend. He was just learning a lot about me. He was picking up vulnerabilities on me, and I never knew at the end of the day if this guy was setting me up or if he was truly my friend. Even though I believed he was, I have reason to believe that he wasn't. I was coming out of the restaurant one day, and this guy met me, and he wanted me to go home to spend the holidays with my family, which I didn't want to at the time. I wasn't ready to. He said to me, I want to help you get home. What will it take? I says, well, I want to go home and I want to buy presents for everybody, because to me, buying presents for everybody would mean that I'm doing really well. And I said, I want to do that, and I want to show them how good I'm doing. And I says, but it's just too soon, and I can't afford presents and a plane ticket to go home. He says, I'm going to get you your plane ticket to go home. He says, we'll take care of that. And he says, you don't have to pay me back. And he was a good friend to me at the time. And when I asked him, why are you doing that for me? He says that he had a daughter my age, and that he would want my daughter home too for the holidays. And long story short, when I met him after work and he gave me the money for the plane ticket, I was surrounded by police. There were police everywhere, and they had arrested me, and they supposedly arrested him too. But everything happened so fast. When I was told that I was being arrested for prostitution, I did not even know what that word meant at the time. And then I even said to the officer, I don't know what that word meant. And he said it's solicitation, and I didn't know what solicitation meant. From the time I was arrested, I could call no one. And the reason why I couldn't call anybody is because I didn't know who to call. I mean, who was I going to call to say I was arrested for prostitution? I mean, the shame was overbearing. The fear was overbearing. I didn't know if I was more fearful of being out in the streets or being in jail, by being around people that were supposed to love and protect me, or being in jail. There were so many different messages and conflicts I had going on emotionally, and nothing was making sense, even with this guy that was supposed to be my friend, or that pretended to be my friend. And I was asking, wonder, where is he? What happened? How did this happen? So the questions just kept filtering through without any closure there, until it was probably the middle of the night. And I never called anyone, by the way. I just assumed rot there, because I just wasn't going to call anyone. I wasn't going to call my boss, and I wasn't going to call home. And so it was probably the middle of the night. An officer came and said that they were releasing me, that someone was coming to bail me out. And long story short, I had no idea who this guy was that bailed me out. He was just tall, distinguished looking, well-dressed, and I was he was bailing me out. I was who is this guy? And it turned out he said, don't worry about it. He says, I'm here. He said, your boss sent me. And I was yeah, so I'm going to leave here. But how did he find out? I did not call anybody. So that was a mystery. He took me to his house to get a drink and for something to eat. And it was a very nice house in a suburban area in Hollywood or Miami, Florida. And my drink was, and he locked the door where you needed a key to get in or out. And basically that was my life for weeks and months to come. He took my identity. He gave me a new name, and he told me I now belong to him. So there was a lot of things that happened that were just so left unknown how I got there, who this person was or who he claimed to be. How did they know that I was there if I didn't call my boss? And I just felt like that there was more to it that I didn't know about, but they did. Eventually, I started complying because I thought that it would be my only way to build his trust so I could find a way to escape. And eventually I did. Unfortunately, my escape led me into the hands of another, which I ran one day and running through the neighborhood where a taxi driver pulled up and brought me into his car. And I went willingly. And he said he was from New Jersey like I was, and I felt safe. So when they talk about what does it look like, there's no way where you can identify what a looks like. What does a victim look like? What does a survivor look like? It doesn't go like that because they could look like you or I, you know, there's no certain makeup. And this guy, he basically wanted to help me. He took me back to where I used to live. The landlord wouldn't give me my things back until I turned over thousands of dollars to pay in back rent in order to get my belongings. So I lost all my belongings. So this guy, Joe, said he would help me and he would help me get a job interview. He got me an outfit to go on a job interview for a furniture company. That was a lie. I mean, I went for the job with this guy, Sal, and he hired me. And I went back to Joe's place to tell him I was so excited I got the job. And that's when I found out he wasn't who he said he was. The guy invited me to his room after the interview because it was in a hotel restaurant and I wouldn't go. I said, no, thank you. And he says, come on, we'll go up and celebrate for a drink and have a drink together. And I didn't go, but he was still very nice. But when I got back by Joe's, it was like he came in after me and he like beat the out of me. And he told me that I was supposed to sleep with the guy for giving me the job. And he apparently paid Joe for me to have a relationship with him. And I didn't. I became part of who Joe wanted me to become. And I had no choice in the matter. And I was with Joe for quite some time until I met this girl who I thought was going to be my friend. And she was just a very sweet, kind-hearted friend, and said to me, you look like you could use a friend. And I said, yeah. And she turned out to be a too. So I ended up, she was working with some guy, Melvin, and I fell right into her hands. I ended up with 4 traffickers before I was able to escape the life. And I didn't escape until I was in Vegas. Most of the time, will move you around a lot. There are people that think that they'll move you around because there's different events and conferences and conventions going on. That's not necessarily why they move you around a lot. They move you around a lot because they don't want to get caught. I was moved around constantly. Many times I didn't know where I was unless there was an event attached to it. So for instance, in Georgia, it was Atlanta, I was arrested for solicitation. When I was arrested, I went to a cell and there was an officer that brought me there and released me back to my. When I told the officer's superior what happened, he did not believe me. In fact, he told me to get out and that never to come into that state again. And he usually had Candy go out with me. She was his watchdog. So she would watch me to make sure that I towed the line. But I built up a trust with them where they weren't following me now because I had no intention of leaving. I had no intention of escaping. And the reason why, because I was too afraid. I was strung out. I had nowhere to go. I had, who's going to believe me? They're going to find me and they're going to kill me. And that is the psychological, manipulative control they have over you. Basically, I built up a trust with them where this particular evening, Candy didn't come out with me and I went on my own. And like I said, I had no plan of taking off. Went to this hotel in Vegas. When I walked in, I leaned against one of the tables and this guy immediately said to me, hey, he goes, hi, where are you from? And you never give your real name and you never say where you're really from. I did say my real name and I did say where I was from. I said New Jersey. And he said, oh, he said, my girlfriend's from New Jersey and she's here with me. And I was like, yeah, okay, so what, And he was like, you want to meet her? And I'm like, why do I want to meet his girlfriend, He said, come on to my room and I'll introduce you. So I immediately was paranoid and thought this was a setup. I just said the wrong thing and I'm leaning up against a table and I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing at that time. He said to me, oh, I know this girl. He went to his room and he said, stay here, then I'll go get her if you don't want to come. Lo and behold, he comes out and it's a girl that I grew up with. It's a girl I went to school with. I just remember her saying to me, what happened to you? Like she used other words, but she says, what happened to you? And she was like in shock when she saw me. And she said to me, you got to go home. And I says, I want to go home. And she called my family. That night, I was on a plane going home. Going home was going back to another place that for me wasn't healthy, but wasn't no comparison to that life either. But going home, what you did was sweep what happened under the carpet, which is what I knew best and which is something you don't talk about. You don't talk about it because people don't want to hear about it. People aren't going to believe you. People are going to question. And you're left with the fear. You're left with the shame. 6 months, give or take, I met someone that I was working with for the counties as a social services. And we ended up dating. He wanted to get married. I told him all about my past. I said, if we're going to get married, I'm going to need to tell him everything. And he says, I still want to marry you. And he's the first one that said to me, it's not your fault what happened. But I knew that getting married, it was something that was important that I be transparent with him. Unfortunately, a few months after we were married and the honeymoon period was over, we had some really bad arguments. And one of the arguments happened where it was around Thanksgiving time and we were supposed to go to his family's for Thanksgiving. And I couldn't go because the argument turned out to be a fight and I got hurt. I saw another side of him that was never abusive. And that's one of the things I loved about him. I says, this is the first guy I'm meeting that turned out to be like straight. Who he was is what he is. He was angry that he left to go to his parents for Thanksgiving. But when he came home that night, he was really upset. And he says, I'm really sorry. He says, I have to leave you. He said, because I was so angry you didn't come with me to my parents for Thanksgiving, that I told them about your past. He told them about my past, and they told him that if he didn't leave me and divorce me, that they were going to disown him. So the reason I share that with you is because many times as victims or survivors, we won't share because people are going to judge and people are going to not want to have anything to do with you. He did divorce me, and it was very, very difficult for me. I started doing heavily until I started getting into accidents. One day I reached out to my parents and I said to them, I know I have a problem. I want to fix it, but I need help. And they said to me that you could do it yourself. And so I started looking for a place myself. So I found this place in Morristown, New Jersey. It was called Center for Addictive Illnesses. I was supposed to be a 28-day program and they kept me for 6 months. And from there, they sent me to a halfway house, Mrs. Wilson's in Morristown, which was amazing. I was there for a year before I went into community living, got a job with AT&T, and I was really doing well. One of the things I recall, though, with my meeting is when you're in rehab, you're supposed to be doing honest inventories. So although my inventories were honest and I was following all the steps, one of the things that I didn't do was the step as far as I kept the most important part of my inventory out, and that is when I was in the life, because there was still a lot of shame attached to that. So I overcame my Cool. So right now I'm with the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking as their consultant. We do a lot of work educating schools, students, faculty, healthcare facilities, legislators, law enforcement. We do a lot of PSAs. We work alongside the Department of Education, New Jersey Department of Education. We also bring a lot of survivors to the table throughout the United States so we can hear their different lived experiences, and this helps us give a better perspective of not just one person's lived experience, because we never want people to think this is the way it happens. So just like me sharing part of my story doesn't mean that this happens to everybody the way it happened to me. But when people ask, how does it happen that one becomes a victim of such a horrific crime? And it doesn't just happen like that with human trafficking. There's layers upon layers. If there's a child that's vulnerable and going through difficult situations, if there's a child that's being abused, different forms of abuse, whether through family, whether through anyone that they know that their so-called friends or whoever it is, it's like, until you can understand that this is not normal behavior, it's going to be difficult for anyone. I don't care if it's a guy or a girl. It's going to be difficult for anyone to self-identify. So we like to bring different perspectives to the table to give the listeners the ability to know how it can happen. And we're always looking to collaborate, because not one person or one leader or one organization can do this alone. Like what you're doing today and what I know that your reputation has you continue to do on this podcast, it really enables us to bring the truth, to bring the light out on this horrible crime. So I can't thank you enough for all that you're doing to give us that opportunity.